kick.
Today we're doing an install of the Craft C Performance sequential taillights on a GR Corolla. For this installation, you're going to need a ratchet or a screwdriver that accepts sockets, a deep seat socket or socket extender if you're using your ratchet like this. You'll also need a 10mm socket, likely need a flashlight, trim removal pry tool, a set of needle nose pliers, some little snips just to get the zip ties off of everything. The most important tool is one of these. This is for electrical work to snake wires up areas. It's called flat fish tape or fish tape. You can normally get it for about 20 to 30 bucks at a hardware store. It will be extremely important for this install. All right, to get started, we're gonna be taking the outside portion of the taillights off first. To do that, all you need to do is grab this piece of plastic here and pull. Won't sound great, but that's all you need to do. You can see I've taken mine off a couple times, so the clips are a little bit mangled, but that's no big deal. I'm just gonna take this and set it down here on the ground. And now that reveals these two bolts for us right here. For these bolts right here, you just need a 10mm socket. One, two, nice and easy. Next thing is gonna be, we're gonna pull this taillight off the back of the car. You're gonna have to pull pretty hard. I recommend holding right here on the side and right here on the side, and you're gonna pull out towards you and up slightly. It's gonna be pretty difficult. Also watch your fingers because there's sharp plastic, which I'll be able to show in a minute under here, which has cut my fingers up pretty badly before. So we're just gonna pull. Out like that. So you can see one clip right here, and there's more clips down there. Now, some people recommend putting masking tape on the car right here because you can scratch the paint when that comes off. I personally have never done it that way, but it is an option. All right, so you're gonna notice right here, you have your wires going into the car and a little rubber gasket. You're just gonna grab this gasket and pull. It's gonna take a little effort, but you just need to work it out. It may help to twist slightly. Now that's out, you can just pull to get to this clip right here, push down on the end right there, and I'll let you take the factory tail light out. Left-hand side tail light from Craft C. This is just gonna go straight into there. So feed all this through. This right here I plugged in. Okay, now this rubber gasket on the Craft C unit, you're going to have to sit back into this little hole.
You can see there's a ring around the edge right there. You may have a little difficulty getting that to sit in properly, but it is necessary for proper water sealing of the unit. So just work your way along the edge, pushing it in little by little. Careful not to push it too hard because you can push the entire thing in. Then getting that back out will be a little bit difficult. So what we're going to do now is just put this straight back in like the unit we took out a minute ago. You may have noticed that my car has this wire right here. This is for my 5th brake light down here. That's a light on my car. But if you do have one of these, if you don't, installs exactly the same, so it doesn't particularly matter. Line everything up. Make sure that green tab is lined up right there. Tabs on the bottom. And you can kind of feel once it's lined up well. So you're just going to take this unit now and just push it back. It won't click or snap or anything like that. It should go in nicely, easily, without any real issues. And then these 2 bolts are going to line up right here. And just nice and gently put those back in. Now these are plastic threads, so when you're putting these bolts back in, be careful to not strip those plastic threads. And that's good just like that. Now we're going to take this little plastic piece right here. It's just going to go right back. Make sure all your tabs are straight so that it doesn't fall out when you're doing things later. These tabs are just going to line up. One in the top right there, one in the middle right there, and then one on the bottom right there. So you're just going to line it up. Make sure it's all facing the right direction. Try to get the tips of them in first. Then you just push, push. Then make sure you push these edges down here in as well. And just like that, you have the outer portion of the taillight physically installed. Now, for the wiring that we need to do in there, there's 2 ways you can do it. If you want to pull everything out, like if you're doing the 5th brake light install at the same time, you're going to take this trunk tray out, these out, and you're going to pull this whole piece of carpet out of the car. I'll link a video right here showing how to do that by a good buddy named Dima. If you don't want to do all that, there is a simple way to install that wiring, but we are going to do that later because first we need to tackle the trunk portion, these lights here. Before we do that, we're just going to take a trim removal tool and we're going to start popping out this back portion of the trunk. It's just held in by plastic pop clips. So if you get a little bit up and then pull, it'll start coming out for you. Just work it around with your trim removal tool so you don't accidentally break any by pulling too hard on any one piece. And we're going to start the removal of the exterior hatch lights. Now with this off, we're going to be removing the screws on the inside of here. You will need an extended socket or deep reach socket because it's up there in that little hole. There are 2 bolts right here. Those are going to be just the same 10 mils.
Chiming in from the edit right here, that should not be what it looks like. The nuts should actually just be coming off when you unscrew that on all 3 bolts. Mine have an issue, and I will be covering that in just a minute. But I'm just going to continue on for a second, acting like that's completely normal.
All right, that's the outside portion off of that one. We're going to need to unplug this red wire right here. So you're just going to push this in and pull out. I'm going to pull that out after loosening those 3 bolts. Pull it out like that. So I'm just going to cut to when these are out, just to save everyone some time. All right, I am back now after having removed all these. I actually had to go over and do the other side as well because these were also stuck. Moving on, we're gonna grab the Craft C taillights for the hatch portion. Boom, boom, and slot those in. All right, and then just come down to the outside of the car. I'm doing this by myself, just using one arm to keep the trunk down. Feed those wires through right there, just like that. All right, I'm just grabbing the wires from the back right here, just to make it a bit easier. Now, just line those up right there. Try to line that one up as best you can. It'll just sit right there. Okay, those two are through right there. That one up in the middle just needs a little bit more finagling to get it to sit in the correct spot, but that is correct now and looks good. Not making the mistake again of putting these on too tight. Again, 10mm socket for these little nuts. You will reuse these off of the factory tail lights, so it's important you don't lose them. For anyone that missed it, if it was too dark, that right there is going to be the bolt that we are installing. They're quite long, so it's going to take a while. I'm doing it with this wrench here. It may be easier to do it with a ratcheting screwdriver. The last time I installed this, I used this right here, and that was too much torque, and that's what ended up causing these to come out of the taillight housing. Be patient, take your time. It's not a big deal. There we go. That's tight. I'm not going to force it, not going to torque it. You know, really just hand tight to where you feel it grab. Do these ones on the outside right here. All right, that's tight. Again, do not need to torque it down super hard. Really, I'm just going until there's resistance, and I'm calling that tight. Good, good. Just make sure this one in here is still tight. Good. All right, one side done. Now we're just gonna come over here. This is gonna be your wire for the sequential turn signals. If you don't care about that, you don't need to plug this in. Then this thicker one right here, you're just gonna plug in right there, like the factory taillights were. That's your main power, functionality, all that. Brake, turn signal, hazards, everything. This one is going to be the difficult one to install. You'll notice this one isn't very long, and they need to connect all the way down to there. So Craft C actually included these extenders. Now, when I had my test set originally, as I was the prototyping vehicle, and I did the testing for them to make sure they worked without issues, all that, I had to just connect this short wire through there, through the trunk. I couldn't open my trunk. It was a mess. So we had this big length of wire. The way we're gonna run this down is we're gonna attach one end right here. Just gonna attach this now.
All right, recording this on my phone and inserting it earlier into the video than when it's actually taking place. I just realized that these have a male and female on them. So make sure you plug in the correct end up here so that when you run it down through here, that you don't accidentally have the wrong end. Then you have to redo everything, take it out, and then run it all back through one more time.
Just gonna attach this now. Like that, it will click into place. And then this big thing, we're gonna have to snake down through here, down the hatch, and then to right here. You can see that mine is popped up a little bit just from this wire from my rear view mirror and dash cam combo. But you're just gonna use your pry tool that we used the first time, pull that back and it'll slide right out. It's just some pop clips, pretty easy. Mine might look a little bit different than yours in here. That's because I have a dash cam with a ton of wiring right there. And I also have a third brake light flasher module right there. So mine will look slightly different than yours, but all the wiring for the Craftsy taillights will be the exact same. So we're just running this wire down the side of the hatch like this. Now, this portion of the install will take the longest for most people. I think you're going to be running into issues whichever direction you go with it. So I will cut back once this is down there. See you in probably 2 hours.
5 hours later.
I did it off camera, but what I did was I took this. It's called a fish tape or flat fish tape. It's used in electrical applications to run wires up into strange places, which is what this is. First, I tried to take this and run it down with the wire. So I'll show you how that worked here. What I ended up doing was running it up through by itself first to get the bend. Now the end of that is right up here. I'm trying to grab it with my fingers right now to show you. End of that's right here. I'm going to take this wire, put it through the little loop right there, and now I'm just going to retract this back through and it'll pull that with it. Slowly but surely, just have a little patience. If it feels like it's caught on something, just give it a second and try again. You don't need to yank hard, especially with this connector right here. You want to avoid breaking anything. I'm just going to take my pliers, put some pressure on that right there to get those out. And now those are free. It'll be the exact same as the right side, but I will likely do all this off camera. So you're going to take this wire, make sure you pull it all the way through. All right, so what I'm doing now, sorry for the glare, but I had to put another light in just for myself. I'm just taking this boot off. First, I took this weather stripping out. All I did was pull gently right here, and it comes off the top and out of the bottom. It just pulls right out. This gives you access to the headliner, which we'll need in just a moment. So for now, we're just pulling this boot out. You just pull down on that right there, and it'll let you get the boot off of this little plastic clip right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this little wire, feel through the hatch to where the top of this clip is, and try to just snake that down into there. You only need to get it through a little bit. Once you do, you can grab a little bit like that. But just cutting back in here after a minute, I ended up taking this boot off right here. I'm taking this boot off the bottom as well, just a little bit, just to give me some space. I used the same tool that we used a couple minutes ago, just to push the wire through to the end, right here. It did take a considerable amount of effort, but I got this through with the help of this tool. Highly recommend it. They're about 25 bucks at a hardware store. I taped this right here just to make sure that I wasn't pulling too hard on the connector itself, because this is a very, very tight fit in here. It's the same as before. I'm gonna grab this metal right here, squeeze it with a set of pliers just to make space for that to come out. Now we need to pull this back through this rubber boot. Just go slowly. We don't need to be tearing anything. We want to be careful with all this, not get too frustrated. Just take our time. Now this left side is going to be harder than the right side just because it's a lot longer. We have much more wiring coming through right here. I am showing you guys the difficult side first. Like I said, we want to be careful with this and not pull too hard because this did loop on some wires inside right there. So we're just going to get those out and off safely. All right, That is free now. It did take a little work just because I got looped on a wire right here, but we didn't break any wires, didn't rip anything out, and that's what's important. Now, before we put this boot back on, I'm going to grab our loose wire right here and just pull it taut. We do have a lot of wire here, so we want to make sure that we clean all this stuff up that is in here as much as we can. Move it all to one side. We're making sure it's taut in between every step because it's going to be a lot more difficult to get everything taut once it's all the way down to there. Next step is getting this wire through this plug here. That's why we pulled this weather stripping out, because we need to get down to the roof liner. So we're just going to feed that down slightly, just enough to poke it through. Grab my pliers, poke those through the headliner just so I don't tear the glue too much, and try to grab the end of that wire. I have grabbed the end of the wire with my pliers now, so I just pulled it out a little bit towards me, where I can grab it with my fingers, just like that. Now we can see the end of it. And now, just like we've done a couple of times now, we're just gonna pull this nice and taut. Now it's through, it's hanging out right here. We're gonna leave this here just like this for a minute while we reinstall these boots onto these plastic attachments right here. The difficult way to do this is to try to wiggle the boot back up and around like that and like that on the back and the front. Now that will take you a long time. There's a faster way to do it. These boots are gonna have little pins holding them in place. You can see one right there. There's essentially one where each of these holes are. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take a trim removal tool, poke the two in the front in, reach around if you can, poke the two in the back in, and just wiggle that out. It'll make it much easier. Starting on the bottom right here, just gonna slide this boot back as much as possible. There is a little rubber tether connecting it to this, so we can't move it back too far, but we can move it back slightly, and that will be enough for us. All right, we got one. Now I'm trying to get the second one on the front here. Okay, there's the second one on the front. And you only need to get the ones on the front and that'll pop out. We've got this little plastic piece out. You can see very clearly now, there's two push tabs on the front, there are two on the back. But if you just get the ones on the front and push it back while lifting up, it'll be able to rotate out of that slot. That is the easier way to get these boots back on, otherwise you're in for a bad time. Still, that did take me about 3 minutes with my trim removal tool, and we're not done yet. So, if you look on these boots that were on there, there's a lip in here, and it needs to sit all the way inside of this lip on this ring here, right there. So we're gonna start at the back, work our way to the front, and get it done. So pull over on the back, and then grab that rubber. I'm actually gonna use the trim removal tool once again right here to pull it out slightly. Just working my way around the edge, making sure it's on. All we have left is this one corner right here, it looks like. Great, that's pulled over there. Now we're just gonna go back around to the back, make sure it's pulled over, and just work our way around nice and slowly, ensuring that this is all reinstalled exactly as it should be. Just like that. Now we can see the back is on, the sides are on. That is fully on. Now we're just gonna take this clip, pop it back in, pushing the front, pushing the back. We heard the clips go in, but you just want to double check by pushing. Make sure that's all on there, nice and good. Never hurts to double check. So that's good right there. Now we have this one up top, just with our hands, and just pull it like that. So I just pulled ever so slightly from the inside on this black plastic, just a little bit, about that much pressure. We don't want anything to break. And then I pushed this front back towards the front of the car and pulled down at the same time to get these two front clips to pop out. Now we're gonna push this whole thing back and rotate down, just like that. And if you push just right, it should come out on both sides, giving you this. Now it's gonna be the same process as it was on the other side. We just need to get this lip right here seated fully on this. So I'm gonna take the flashlight out of my hand, get to it. Remember, we're just working our way around slowly. This clip is nice and large, so it's a little bit easier for us. Double check, make sure everything is on as far as it can be. Remember, this is part of the car's weather sealing to make sure that all of your wires and electronics running through the hatch and into the back of the car don't get wet. So you really want to make sure that these are on nice and good. Now we're just going to take this, same as the back, and we're just going to pop it straight up. You should hear all the clips pop into place. Just double check it, make sure. And now we have one of the most difficult parts of this install completed. Continuing where we left off, we have this long wire, which still needs to make its way all the way down here along the weather stripping, down to the tail light right here. So the way we're gonna do that is just we're gonna feed it right here through the headliner, down through this gasket, down to right here. While we have all this open and we're feeding this wire through, that's the same time when we're gonna connect these tail lights into the wiring harness. So let's do it. We've pulled our weather stripping out down to just below this plastic piece. It's gonna make it really easy for us to just feed this wire all the way through. Now there is some grease on the edge where the weather stripping is, just to make sure that no liquids make it inside of these body panels right here. Don't need to worry about reapplying that right now because we're not removing too much of it, but do be cautious of it, just so that you don't get your fingers covered in grease and then go touching anything inside the car, down to about right here. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, you can take your trunk mat out, take the big piece of styrofoam out, take this portion right around the trunk latch off, and then undo some more bolts right here and right here for the cargo nets. And I will link a video of how to do that. And then pull all this back, take it all out, and do it the correct way. There is another way to do it, which is the way I'm going to do it, which is I'm just gonna grab in here, just pull this off. If you want, you can try to use a pry tool because there are clips in there, just like that. Just one smooth, hard push. You're gonna do the same down here. Pry tool wasn't quite able to get it on its own, so I'm just gonna stick my fingers in there and pull. Now that is out right there and right there. If you're only doing this the once, this is a fine way to do it, although you will see, having done this 5 or 6 times, I am starting to tear the carpet a little bit right there. So I wouldn't recommend doing this if you're going to be installing lights frequently like I have done. That is also why this is coming unglued right here. So looking in here, you're gonna have your main wiring harness wire for the lights. That was just tucked right here. Easy to see, easy to grab. It's a nice white clip with nothing attached to it. Mine's gonna look a little different because I do have that plug and play 5th brake light kit installed. So I just have a little Y connector right there where you can see it, but it's not an issue. Now you're just going to reach back there, find the back of the rubber grommet that the taillights have on them, and pull that out as well. So now we've got two things going on right here. One, we have these two Now we're going to have two things going on here. One is the main wiring harness wire, which is going to connect to the taillights. Very simply, you're just going to plug it in like that, easy click. The second is you have your sequential wire. That's this long wire. And you're just going to ensure it's facing the right direction. And plug that in. I said ensure it's facing the right direction just to make sure that I plugged it in the right way myself. It will only plug in one orientation, so you don't need to worry about getting it wrong. Anyways, what we're going to do now is just tuck those wires back in like that. Now you can take all this extra wire right here, just tuck that back just like this. Now you've got all that extra wire tucked in there. It's not in the way of anything. We're going to clean it up a little bit more momentarily. Make sure your carpet's all down around the trim. But before we do that, there is a couple things that I want to check first. I do want to check the functionality of the taillights first to make sure that we have everything attached correctly before we put anything back on this side. All right. I just turned the lights on to ensure that they were going to turn on this side correctly, and they did. The startup animation played, which is a good sign. Now I'm just going to hit the hazard button just to make sure that the sequential turn signal portion works. Close the hatch for a moment, and yes, it is working. So, last test, just tap your brakes for a moment. And yes, brakes did work. Means everything is working correctly. And turn the lights back off. Now we have the left side of the car done. All that's left on this side of the car is we're just going to make sure we tuck all this weather stripping back in just to about right here by the hinge. Now with all those clips back in, we're just going to take our weather stripping, push it back on to that line right there. On this side, if you are doing this with this already reinstalled, just make sure you tuck that underneath right there, like that. And then just push, push, push. Nice and easy all the way up. You may run into a snag. Just stop for a moment, look at it, and keep pushing all the way back to the top. Should go on without any fuss, any issue. We're gonna stop right there at that hinge. Double check, make sure everything's on correctly. Did find a little bit of grease right there, so I'm just gonna take a rag. Make sure that's hidden. Are gonna wanna be cautious. I've done this a couple times so far. So my carpet does stick out ever so slightly right there. I'm just gonna make sure I have it pushed all the way in, but it does still stick out slightly. Also, make sure that all of this is pushed down all the way because you don't want any water getting in here. Again, on the outside, we're gonna do the same thing. Go along, make sure it's all seated correctly on the outside right there. That is the end of the video, everyone who just did the install regularly. You just put everything back into the car, exactly how we took it out, and you'll be good to go. If you keep watching, you'll see what I went through when I stripped those bolts. So yeah, keep watching. It's actually 2 days later now. They were so stuck, I had to go to the store, pick up a bolt extractor. It's a good tool that everyone should have. I'm just gonna show you what happened here. So these have this little attachment right here. This is normally threaded. You can tell mine's mangled because I've tried so many things with it. But a 5/8 inch wrench will fit on this. So if you can grab onto it like that, if you have a really thin walled socket or something, and you have the same issue where, you know, that gets stuck in there. If you have a really thin walled socket, you can probably get a good enough grip on that right there that you can just spin it off. I do not. So I tried a bunch of things. I tried to cut a groove into it and use a flathead screwdriver. Ended up breaking 2 screwdriver tips trying that. I scratched up the back of the car a bunch trying to get this out. You can see all that paint damage there. Right here, I did touch-up paint. Same with right there. And right there, there's touch-up paint as well. Now, this can all be avoided if you just start with an extractor from the jump. I did not. But like I said, 5/8 right there. That can work. Otherwise, you're just going to take a drill bit, nice thin one, drill right through the center right there. Take your extractor, tap it in like that, and then remove it that way. I also tried using this, like for seized nuts. And the metal on this, I tapped it on with a hammer. That's why this one here is so smooth on the outside and so much thinner than they were originally. I tapped it on, but this metal is so soft that it just ate the outside of that right up. So if you get yourself in the same boat as me, where you have those stuck, you just need to use an extractor. So these outside 2, pretty easy to do with a wrench, not a big deal. But that one in there, you likely can't get a wrench in there because it's recessed. So just use an extractor, do yourself a favor. When I removed my lights for the first time, did not have that issue. I think it's from over tightening that caused them to stay. So if you have the same issue as I did, where they stay, that's going to be your fix, but you shouldn't have that issue.